What is up, guys? It is the Bluebloods here coming at y'all with some week zero recaps, man. Week zero is in the books. We had some huge upsets, some great games, some great performances, and we're here on the Bluebloods to recap them all. And we got to start with the MEAC SWAC Challenge, in which the MEAC wins again, guys. North Carolina Central pulling off the 23-14 upset of Alcorn. And man, I think it might be an understatement to say that nobody outside the state of North Carolina or the campus of North Carolina Central saw this one coming. And I am just so impressed with how they pulled this game out and really imposed their will down the stretch against Alcorn. And when I say impose their will, I mean, you could tell both teams were sloppy early. That long layoff, not playing since 2019, really affected both teams early. But you have to give NCCU credit for turning this game into something physical that really, outside of the first scoring drive for Alcorn, they weren't ready for. Once they got hit in the mouth, Alcorn just seemed like they were on the mat and couldn't respond. Only had one other scoring drive, past that first scoring drive to lead off the game. And I mean, you look at, what they looked like at the beginning of the game with all the energy, momentum, just that they looked like Alcorn for that first drive. And then once they kind of got hit in the mouth, when you look at how the game ended, the last 3 minutes, the look on the players' faces, the body language, the tone of the game, completely different. And for me, the most impressive stat that really encompasses what happened here is North Carolina Central converting on 50% of their third down attempts, which we'll get to in a little bit on why that was the case, and Alcorn only being 1 for 10 on their third down attempts, which while NCCU was able to close this game out down the stretch, and while Alcorn had a tough time getting down to the red zone and converting on some opportunities. And I want to start with Alcorn because they really, like I said, got punched in the mouth. And when I look at the strategy, the play calling, everything like that, I don't understand why they abandoned the run down the stretch. And I get it. Once you're down, it's kind of hard not to get into that pass-heavy set, but Felix Harper isn't really that guy you could just count on to create fire out of nowhere and just start throwing it all around the yard without, especially in games where he doesn't have his momentum built up. And when you look at what Nico Duffy, and also a breakout guy for me is Stafford Anderson, man. I was very impressed with him. They combined for over 180 yards on the ground, and Stafford was averaging over 11 yards per carry, guys, and Duffy was still averaging 7. And what I mean by why, abandoning the run game, what it did for them is the lack of commitment to the run game really put them in unmanageable situations on third down. Therefore, they weren't able to establish drives and, control the time of possession. And therefore, their defense kind of burnt out late in the game, which is what we saw. And the lack of commitment here really put Felix Harper into some very, very obvious uncomfortable situations for him, and it took him out of his rhythm. It took this offense out of his rhythm, and it really made them predictable down the stretch because they got both running backs out of their rhythm, and NCCU was able to establish their run game, and therefore they controlled the time of possession, and they kept Alcorn's defense on the field a long time. And the front seven of Alcorn didn't have the depth to really keep up with what NCCU was doing down the stretch. And when I mentioned Felix's performance, he was never able to find the rhythm down the stretch, and the play calling was questionable because the playmakers that we talked about on the preview that everyone was looking for were not really built into the game plan. Nico Duffy had seven carries, and they didn't get their top 5 receivers involved in the game plan as much as I thought. And the telling stat for me, the advanced analytics, shout out to Pro Football Focus for this. I love how they give this breakdown. Felix Harper was 2 for 10 for 36 yards, in which he threw the ball 10 or more yards down the field. So a lot of his production was either behind or within 5 yards of the line of scrimmage. If you don't have a deep threat, if you don't have the ability to take the top off the defense, and these teams are going to really become, these defenses are going to be able to predict what Alcorn wants to do. They're going to load the box, stop the run, and they're going to be able to test that offensive line, which was suspect at times last time. This is going to become a serious problem for Alcorn as they face stiffer competition. Now, look at the D-line that Southern's going to be bringing in. If you can't run the ball and then you can't throw the ball down the field, it's going to be a problem with their D-line. If you look at Jackson State, if you look at Alabama State, I don't even know if they play, but those are some of the best D-lines in the conference. It's going to be a problem for Alcorn. And on the flip side, as much as, as much as I want to talk about Alcorn because we have a lot of SWAC supporters, I want to give the flowers to Davius Richard, Jordan Freeman, and Isaiah Totten. They deserve all the props in the world because they were the key to this offense for NCCU, which I will admit I thought was suspect at best. I said that they could probably run the ball a bit, but I didn't believe in Richard to make the plays needed to win this game. And he outplayed Felix Harper on the biggest stage. And the number one thing he did, which I'm very critical of Felix for not doing, is be a playmaker when things broke down. Yes, Richards at times missed throws. He was inconsistent, but he made up for it with his legs, and he made opportunistic throws in crucial moments for the Eagles, man. And he still had 64 yards rushing, 7 yards per carry, 2 touchdowns. You know what? I'm going to say this. He also is credited with taking a linebacker soul on the goal line. That linebacker met him at the line at the end zone, and this kid put him in the dirt. And that play really solidifies what this game was. It was NCCU being physical and more determined to win this game than Alcorn. And that's really what it came down to. And Freeman and Totten came up big time. I thought Totten was going to be the feature back, but really and truly, Jordan Freeman deserves all the credit in the world for showing up, being big time for the Eagles with 72 yards rushing, averaging over 7 yards a carry. I think Freeman and Totten are going to be a MEAC running back pair that's really going to be interesting down the stretch for this team. And also, Manny Smith was the game's MVP on defense for them. 10 tackles, a sack, a forced fumble. And for me, it's really more about what NCCU did at times than it is about Alcorn's mistakes. Now, Alcorn did make a lot of mistakes, but you could tell past that first drive that they were just outmatched physically at times. And the front seven for Alcorn is a huge concern for me moving down the stretch for them. They just got pushed around. Alcorn lost both battles on the line of scrimmage. And when you do that, there's no way you can pull off a win in a big game like this. And what it does for me is really have a lot of concern about what Alcorn's going to do in these next few games. They got Northwestern State in 2 weeks, I believe, in Lorman. They got South Alabama, UAPB. I mean, they have some serious games. Grambling's coming up. They aren't going to have many easy wins on the schedule, including a Southern and a JSU matchup later in the season. This team's in real trouble now. This was the game the experts thought they should win. This is the game the fans, the coaches, I mean, everyone in the world outside of NCCU thought that Alcorn had this game. And so that was just one of the things that went wrong for Alcorn. And then also NCCU and the MEAC is going to be interesting. Everyone just kind of chalked it up to South Carolina State's, conference to lose, which it is. But is NCCU, if they bring this same mentality, that bring your lunch pail to work type attitude to each game, how could they pull off enough wins to really compete for the MEAC now that FAM and in North Carolina A&T and all these teams are out of there? Bethune, I think they could be a factor down the line. But for me, a lot of people were making a lot about the 4-8 record 2 years ago, all the freshmen, all the transfers. Well, what we saw is one team that came out really ready to put it all on the line for a win in their first game in 2 years, and a team that it looked like the moment got too big. They got outplayed. They didn't show up. And if Alcorn doesn't match, or if Alcorn doesn't improve the energy and the conditioning and the execution down the stretch, they're going to have a lot more losses on their record than I think a lot of people expected going into the season. And I'll be one of the first to admit it. I had them winning the West. I really think Southern and UAPB right now are probably better teams, and that could change once we see both of those teams hit the field. But right now, based on what I saw from Alcorn, they don't have the offense or defensive line to make an impact. The linebackers for me didn't flash. Their secondary is legit. Their running backs are legit, but right now you have to be wondering, what was up with Felix Harper. I know some fans are wanting to say it was a concussion due to a big hit he took in the face mask where he pulled his neck around. It could be. But when you are a consensus I would say top 2 or 3 quarterback in the SWAC going into this game, you got to give me more than that. And what I want to see is, can this play calling improve, and do they have the ability to take the top off the defense and push the ball down the field? Because the run game was there at times. They abandoned it, and it just looked like Felix Harper and those wide receivers couldn't carry the offense down the stretch. The punt return was big, and it just looked like NCCU just wanted it a little bit more than Alcorn. But guys, comment below your thoughts on the game. What is next for NCCU and Alcorn? Like I mentioned, Alcorn welcomes in Northwestern State in 2 weeks, while NCCU heads to Marshall in 2 weeks for a big FBS versus FCS matchup. So I'm sure that won't be a great one to watch as well. But guys, comment below your thoughts on the game. What was your predictions? What are your takeaways from this game? Are you worried about Alcorn, or what are your thoughts on NCCU in the MEAC this year? And guys, also, if you're not subscribed, make sure to subscribe. We got more previews coming this week. I believe the previews are starting Tuesday or either tomorrow or Wednesday for this week. We got games starting on Wednesday night. So make sure to subscribe. Appreciate y'all for supporting, man. But we will be back with some content later this week. But for myself and the Blue Bloods, man, we are out for right now.